Hey everyone, this is a very rough and ready demo of Camp, my new static site generation tool for Racket and Racket users. You do kind of have to be familiar with Racket to make the best use of this tool. It's not for everyone, it's really only for me, but if you follow along here, maybe you'll start to see the appeal. Racket or Camp rather, is built on a lot of my other libraries. It's built on Punkt, so you can author your posts in a mix of Markdown and Racket inline code. You can add custom functions to augment the fairly limited capabilities of Markdown. And it comes with a GUI app for content management and publishing and previewing. And it also facilitates creating books and PDFs, print ready PDFs for books out of collections of your web pages. So if you had a bunch of blog posts, for example, you could fairly easily generate a PDF to print a book out of them using Typest. You do kind of have to learn Typest, which is its own its own bag of tricks, but it's a modern and fast alternative to LaTeX, which is the long-standing king of the bog when it comes to creating PDFs. So you can use a programming paradigm in Typest to create PDFs, similar to how you would with LaTeX. So let's get started here. The canonical copy of the documentation is at joeldueck.com. If you go to my website, joeldueck.com, and click on projects, and then you'll see Camp at the top here. There's a link to the docs, and that gets you to this page. And then from here, there is a link to the GitHub repo, Codeberg repo, and all that other stuff. I have a terminal window open here, and then I have the instance of Camp Computer, the GUI app, running up top here. So let's get into it. By the way, the GUI app is not really intended to be an IDE for developing a new site. It's more for once you have the site working the way you want it. It's a very nice way to manage your content, write new pages, preview them, and publish them without getting exposed to all the scaffolding and Racket code that's sitting behind it all. From the command line here, I can use Racco camp new. I'm just going to call the site Times. And it's created a folder in the current folder named Times. It's given you an instruction to install that folder as a locally linked Racket package. Every site in Camp is a Racket package. So you install it as a Racket package, and it just kind of makes some things use a little more convenient. So let's go in there. I'll show you the template here. You can create this from scratch. Using Racco Camp New is just a quick convenience. And you can strip out what you don't need here. The folder structure is pretty much configurable. You can change the names of things. You can have any number of different collections of pages. The main thing here that you'll want to do when you actually want to set up your site is go to this site.rkt file, and we'll do that in a moment. I'm going to follow the instructions up here. Do Racco package install to install this as a package. So now I have a package called Times that's installed. Do Racco camp build to build the initial version of the website. When you do that from the command line, you get some timing information about each phase of the build. And you can see here it's done a collect pass to gather all the metadata and resolve any cross-references you have. It does a build, which creates the HTML files. It generates the RSS or Atom feed, and then it copies over your static assets. And then if I also then do Racco camp serve and open the localhost browser, I get the website. So the template comes with a very basic little design here that's not horrible to look at. And some basic navigation here. That's that. You can see it being done here. This server does watch for changes to the files and then rebuilds them as needed. There's going to be probably some bugs associated with that, but it works pretty well for the most part. I'm going to stop the project server. I'm going to show you the configuration file. So Camp's configuration files are written in Hashlang Camp site, which is really a TOML syntax document, but everything in here is validated. So, for example, the founded value has to be a date. If I mess that up and it's not a valid date, I get a compile time error here. If I make it just a string, for example, then it says, oh, for founded, you got a string and you're supposed to get a date. So that works. Incidentally, if you run a campsite file in your Dr. Racket REPL and it creates and provides a value called TOML after the syntax of the document, which is a hash of all the values that are parsed out of that file. Okay, so what are we looking at here? You've got to give it some basic information about your site. It mostly needs this in order to generate the feed for your site. I insist on having a feed for all of my sites. I think you should too. Then down here we have collections. We have a collection called blog and we have a collection called pages. Each of those has a different source folder where its source files are found, and that's a relative path to the folder here. So there you can name whatever you want. And then each collection has kind of an output path pattern that decides like what are the folder structure and ultimately then the URL for the pages that get generated from these source files. A Racket datum here, which is essentially a list with a module path and then an identifier for the function that's supposed to render these sources into HTML expressions. And it has a sort key and a sort order that is used when generating previous and next links for navigation. You can also add taxonomies. I won't get into that in this video, but they are covered in the documentation here. Where to go from here? So let's actually hide that temporarily. In the Camp app, we can add a site. You can just click Add Site and give it the name of the package. You don't need to give it the complete path. It will use the Racket package system to find the site. Now all you have exposed to you here is just a list of the folders and the source files in those folders. You can double click one to edit it. You can set if you go in Camp Computer, you can set the editor you want in the preferences. It's the only preference that it gives you, but that is choosable. And then this is a punced source file. You can see that it uses the name of your package here. That's because that's kind of a convenience, because if you define any custom functions in your main.rkt file here, they will automatically be brought into scope for your documents. So another reason to install the site as a Racket package locally. Let's see here. In addition to that, you can start the preview and stop the web server preview. You can see some kind of quasi-terminal output down here at the bottom, and it opens up your browser to the site. If you make a change, see if I can it automatically rebuilds after detecting a change. And which one was that? Welcome. So I get this occasionally because of the way it does this, but well, clearly a bug to work out here. It watches for changes, and like if I, it may be that if I restart Camp Computer at this stage, it will work as normal. I'm a little bit aggressive with keeping values in memory and not starting up a separate Racket process. So that's why you can see the change there. That's why it sometimes get these errors. I do have some. So the default site template reprovides the bindings from the Camp XREF module, which is covered in the documentation. I'll just go here to cross references. I have some Scribble inspired facilities for defining terms and then referring to those terms. So if, for example, I'll do a define def term here. And I'll close that. And in the other one, I can refer to that as a term. It's the same word. I'm gonna switch over to the CLI here because I have a bug that didn't come through on my dry run, but Raco camp build do serve, and then save a change here, rebuilds. The structure is a little bit simpler when you're not using the GUI app. But so you can see this is hyperlinked now, and it links to the to a little anchor right here. So that's there's also a page reference system. So if I type see the page ref welcome, then I can go here and reload the first post. You can see that automatically links to the welcome page. There's also some normalization that happens just like in Scribble. So if I say blogs when I'm referring to the blog term, then it will still link correctly to the definition site for the word blog. There's some other stuff that it does here. That's all covered in the documentation. Again, if you wanted to create custom markup essentially in the form of a Racket function that operates on your content, and I'm going to provide that. Whoops, I'm not in Vim. Don't use that shortcut. Okay. I could then use up in my code and go to the first post, and you see that that is now uppercased because it's using that function that comes from the module I just edited. Okay, so much for that. I'll get into the details here with rendering. Again, with this, each collection, you can tell it which function to use to render that content. So this says time/render. That refers to our render.rkt module here, and then use this provided binding within that module. The render function takes a punct document and a context struct. So you can see it's this context which provides the slug for that page, its output URL, which will be a relative URL, the name of the collection it's in, and any taxonomies that apply, like tags or series or whatever else you set up. And it takes those two things and produces a HTML_X expression. So here I'm using a layout function, which kind of provides my site template. So yeah, that's how pages get rendered. Maybe a couple of other things with the Camp Computer app here. When well, I better close this server so I don't get a conflict, but when the server is running, you can right click on a page to preview it and get a preview of that specific page. You can start a new page by clicking the new button and saying watch out for Sasquatch, and you'll see you get a preview down here of the URL that will result for that particular thing. You can change the slug if you want to. If I say SQ, then it'll just put SQ here. The file name will still be based on a normalized version of the title, but this will be the result of the URL that it gets. So you can see that created watch out for Sasquatch.md.racket, and then it added the slug meta here. If I save this, you'll see that the post already, now it seems like it's working nicely, but here's the post here, and there's my content. I'm going to be obnoxious and make this uppercase. Did it right? There it is. All right, pull requests welcome. If you have a deploy script, like a shell script that publishes your site to wherever it lives live on the internet, you can configure that in your site.rkt file. There's a value up here. It's covered in the docs. If Camp Computer detects that, it'll light up this publish button here, and you can publish the current version of your site. When you've done previewing it, you can publish it from the toolbar here. You can also delete pages if you want from here. You can't add collections or folders from within the GUI app at this time. I guess my advice is if you change anything in site.rkt, you'll want to close and reopen this app. I think that's pretty much it. With regards to the book publishing functionality, let's do this. I'm going to close that. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to go, Camp comes with a demo project, and it's in the Codeberg Git repo. Here we go. But it's not like part of the package, but there's an example project there. If you go to the Codeberg repo, You'll see it in the folder here. Let's try serving that site, Rako Camp serve, if I can type properly. So this is the canonical example that I use, the blog of Marion Peru from the dubious musical The Music Man. There's a bunch of blog posts in here. It shows some kind of term definitions and cross-references. And so that's the website version. If there is also a .book.rkt file in here that is similar to Camp Site. It's #Camp Book. Tells kind of how to render, what types to template to use, and then where to get the parts from for the book. You can do things like date filtering in here as well. If you wanted to say all blog posts between this date and this date would be part of the book. And then you can publish it with Rako Camp Print. It will find any .book.rkt files and build the PDF from there. So just opened. This isn't an amazing format, but this is what the kind of thing you can do here. So the template will define what your book looks like, the types to template, that is. For the Children of River City is the dedication. Brilliant. And so you could see the types template that's included in the repo, and it's not amazing. I probably could improve it. Creating books from websites is not going to make your life simpler because there's a whole separate kind of problem domain there. But if you can wrap your head around it, it's really nice to be able to do that. I'll have some links in the description that talk about that. So there it is. I don't think there's anything left to cover here. So if you have questions, let me know. I'm happy to do Zoom calls, office hours. This is kind of the stuff I like to nerd out about otherwise. Peace out. Have a great day.